And welcome back, guys, to the next recap of the Croatian Team Chess Championship. In case you've missed the first and second round, I'm here playing for my team Sveta Nedelja on the first board, which means that I have pretty strong opposition. I've played against Jonas Bjerre in the first round and Ivan Šarić in the second one. And today, in the third round, I had Yuriy Kryvoruchko as my opponent, who now, as you can see, has a rating of 26-28. He was a 2700 player a couple of years ago. Nowadays he seems to be less active. I think that he's working mostly as a coach and or as a second. Doesn't have that many games, but of course he's a very experienced grandmaster and typically quite solid in the opening. I've lost my first game, by the way, in case you missed the recaps, which was quite unfortunate. I had a completely winning position against the Danish number one, Jonas Bjerre, but I managed to bounce back yesterday with the black pieces against Ivan Šarić, which was a very nice result, especially considering that I lost his first game, and to beat such a strong player like Ivan Šarić with the black pieces was something I was quite happy about. But let's have a look at this game. I also played Yuriy Kryvoruchko in the last year. So generally, many of the teams kept the same players, which means that I'm gonna play some of the same players in this year as well. Yuriy Kryvoruchko is one of them. I also had the white pieces back then against him, but there he went for the Sicilian, and we had the Rossolimo on the board with e6 on the third move. There I got a winning position, a winning endgame even, a rook endgame. We've seen many of them in the World Cup, but didn't manage to convert, and later on the game ended in a draw. But I've been talking already way too long, so let's get to the game. So he played e4, e5 in this game, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, I went for the Ruy Lopez, a6, bishop a4, and now he went for d6, which already came sort of as a surprise. Generally, he did have a couple of games with a6, but not that many. Generally, his main repertoire is the Berlin. But he went for this. Now d6, I went for short castle. I did have a couple of other ideas. I mean, not a couple, but I did have one other idea in the World Cup, which now I did not go for in this game. And yeah, maybe that would have been a smarter decision to stick with that one. But I was actually quite curious what he has in mind here after short castle, and then it turned out that he wants to go for this line with b5. Black has many other options, like knight f6 is possible, bishop d7, but generally I played this stuff myself with black, so I was quite comfortable to enter those lines. But b5, of course, caught me off guard, but I was lucky that I actually worked on this from the black side a couple of months ago with a student of mine. The point of this line is that now black wants to go for knight a5 and immediately wants to get this bishop on b3. Of course, the downside of this is that black does kind of neglect his development, and therefore white can immediately strike in the center with d4. What I would also like to say is that I think that he chose sort of a little bit of a strange move order. Typically, if you want this line, you start with b5, bishop b3, and now knight a5. Yeah, probably doesn't really matter that much, but like with this move order, white could start with c3, which then does allow black this line with f5. White could also start with c4. So generally, if you play this line, I would start with b5 and then knight a5, and I think that white doesn't really have anything better to castle, and then after d6, we're back in this line. By the way, I checked this, as I said, a couple of months ago, and if you guys want me to make a video on that from the black side, kind of a repertoire, let me know in the comment section down below. Then I could do that in the following weeks. Generally, the line is quite interesting and offers black some chances for a fight, and especially most white players are probably not going to be that familiar with it. Actually, I think it was recommended by Nikolaos Ntielis, the Greek theoretician, in his Chessable course, if I'm informed correctly, and since then it has gotten quite some popularity. It was quite unfortunate actually for me, because I checked it for the black side before that, and then he made the Chessable course, and now everyone is sort of playing it. Yeah, I went for d4, e takes d4. Another possibility for black is to take here and go f6, which I think was played in the European Team Championship between my compatriot Valentin Dragnev against Lorenzo Lodici, where Ludici actually won quite a nice game from the black side. Objectively speaking, this is not supposed to be that great for black, but it's actually not so easy for white to play this position, because if black manages to get out, he has the bishop pair and is quite stable in the center, but if white is precise here, it should not be that great. So my opponent went for the most principled option. He took on d4. And here I generally spent some time. As I said, I wasn't expecting the line, and I knew a couple of different options for white. I knew that the most critical move, which is played nowadays quite often, is the move rook e1. But it was quite obvious to me that he was especially well prepared here, and that's why I did not want to enter this line. I'll just briefly show you how it continues. So rook e1 has the point that white wants to prepare e5, and then black can have some trouble with the king on e8. Black takes on b3, a takes b3, now c5, c3. I think black should go bishop e7, c takes d4, bishop b7, knight c3, knight f6, and now I think the move is knight h4 here. And I'm actually not sure exactly how it continues. Is it short castle here? Knight f5, is it possible? Something like this, let me quickly check. b4 is the move, yeah. Short castle knight f5 is already bad. b4 is the line, knight d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, short castle, knight f5, bishop f6, bishop f4, and there are some games here. There was one or two correspondence games there as well. Vashila Graf had actually some games here, I think, against Alan Pichot, which was funny because he was playing next to me in the opponent's team. As far as I remember, he had a game there, which I believe actually he won against MVL there. And yeah, computer gives some edge at first, but goes down later. So I'm sure my opponent checked this quite well. So I did not really want to enter those lines. Also, yeah, I mean, black has the bishop pair, so there's always some imbalance there. So I went for knight takes d4, bishop b7, and now bishop d2. I still was aware of that line, but I was double checking that I remembered it correctly, because obviously you always need to be careful about c5, but here it doesn't work because of bishop d5. Now if he takes on d4, I win back the piece like this, which would be quite bad for black, with bishop c6 check to come. And if he takes on d5, I have e takes d5, c takes d4, now queen e1, and then I'm regaining the piece on a5 with pretty good position because his king is still in the center and the pawn on d4 is weak. So he cannot do that. He took on b3, and now knight takes b3. I believe another move is also a takes b3. I think even c takes b3 is possible, but shouldn't be that critical. So I want knight takes b3, and the point here is that white has this idea knight a5, and still black is a little bit underdeveloped, and he can never take on e4 because of rook e1 when he's just going to lose the piece. He went knight f6. I think that there are also some other options. I believe that at some point I looked at rook b8 with the idea to counter knight a5 with bishop a8 to keep the bishop pair. But generally, black is in some danger here overall. There's no way for white to immediately break through or anything, but white did have some ideas with a4. Not entirely sure how this exactly continued. Maybe it was actually a4 immediately. Now that I'm seeing it, yeah, something like this, rook a4. And I was looking at some position like this some time ago, which is not that great for black, but I thought it was a possibility maybe to play for a win, because it's a bit less forcing. But computer here gives quite a big edge, so yeah, I checked this quite a long time ago. Probably many things have changed here. He went for knight f6, which is another logical move, and now I went for knight a5. I still sort of remembered things here, but not so much. It was quite obvious to me that he cannot take on e4 because then rook e1 would come, and now I'm threatening f3 or knight c3. And if bishop e7, I thought I have a couple of dangerous options, so this just shouldn't work for black. Knight c3, and well, he doesn't really have a great square for the bishop. If he goes back here, I have knight c6. If he goes d5, I have something like this, for example, and I'm just going to win the piece. So he went queen c8. I was still aware of some of the lines here, but I couldn't remember that much, so I decided to stick with the most solid line, which is rook e1, bishop e7, and now knight c3. I also still sort of knew that e5 is possible, d takes e5, rook takes e5, bishop d5, and I had this in my black file, and in the end it was okay for black. It was quite scary for black, so you had to know some things, but also playing it from the white side over the board is not so simple. I checked now what was in my file. It was knight c3, bishop e6, bishop g5, h6, and now bishop h4, and then it still continued. But overall, also black had to be careful here, but also had some options, and it gets quite unbalanced. And I wasn't sure how well prepared he was still at this point. He did spend some time, but yeah, that could have also been sort of a psychological trick. So I didn't want to enter this. I was also thinking about going queen e2, bishop e7, and now e5. Now again, if I take with the queen, I thought he has bishop d5. But I was looking at this for a little bit, and I thought this could be something, but then I saw that he might have queen d5 here, and if queen c7, then bishop d6. And if rook e1, just king f8, and here I was a little bit concerned, because if I go to b6 already, there are quite a few ideas here, like knight g4. Yeah, just seemed a little bit scary for me. I'm not that sure how good this calculation was. Actually, it seems like white is clearly better here. So here my evaluation was not correct. My opponent also told me that he was intending to go c5, which seems to be the best move. And after rook e1, he was saying rook a7 might be possible, where I can take the pawn on c5, but he has sufficient compensation. Computer also gives rook d8 here, and then just rook d7, and says that things are completely fine for him. Yeah, I could again take on e5 with the queen immediately, but then I thought he has bishop d5 again. Yeah, which is another story. So I went rook e1, bishop e7, and now I went for the move knight c3. Maybe this is also possible here, to take on b7 first and then rook e5. I was also looking at this, but here, yeah, what was I thinking? I think c5 here as well. Queen e2 and now rook a7, because now it's probably a better version for black, because if I take on c5, then my rook is going to be quite misplaced here. Yeah, this should be probably okay for black, but it would have been another possible try for me. I went for knight c3, short castle, and now queen f3, which looks a bit strange because I'm going directly into the bishop side, but it doesn't really matter because I will always have knight d5, or I can also take on b7. He played rook b8, which is a natural move. He's preparing bishop a8. Generally, his constellation here is a bit awkward, so he needs to get rid of this thing on b7. And here I have a couple of different options. I decided to play the most solid by just taking on b7. I was not feeling like I will have just so much things to play here. He had more time than me. I was also feeling a little bit exhausted from my previous two games, so I was feeling at this point that I'm just gonna play it safe, and that it's probably gonna be a draw. So I took on b7. There are a couple of different options. I was also thinking about rook d1 at first, then bishop a8, and now knight d5. And I was looking at those positions for a little bit. The bishop on a8 is obviously quite a strange piece, but at the same time it's always attacking this pawn on d5, and well, this is maybe I can play for something here. But I was also not sure, like I was looking at this, for example, now b4. And yeah, if rook b5 comes, then things could also go a little bit wrong, even though I was probably a little bit too careful here, because I can always move the bishop, and pawn on d5 should always be well protected. I just wanted to play it very safe. Like, I could also go for c3 here, but generally I didn't really see where things are going here. If he goes queen d7, rook e8, and yeah, this pawn on d5 is always a little bit weak as well. So I decided to take on b7, queen takes b7, and now I played rook d1, and after rook e8, knight d5, I offered a draw, which he accepted. Yeah, the position is just completely equal at this point. The point why I didn't want to play knight d5 immediately is that now he takes and goes bishop f6, and now I have to go c3, which I don't necessarily want to play. Also here it should be just equal, but if I can play without c3, I would probably prefer to do so, because yeah, now my pawns are on dark squares. So I went rook d1, rook e8, and yeah, now knight d5, and he accepted the draw offer. Maybe it could be a better practical decision if you're trying to play for something here to start with b3. Now he has to make one move. Like if he goes back bishop f8, now I'll be more happy to play knight d5, because then he doesn't have bishop f6 here. And now I might actually can have some pressure here, because if I get bishop c3, his bishop is a bit passive. Also here black is extremely solid, so it would also be quite difficult to break through, but at least here I could play for something. In the game I was thinking about queen c6, and now maybe I can play queen d3, which I was not really looking at in the game, just preparing knight d5, and might have also some chances for a slight edge at this point. Yeah, I played knight d5 and offered a draw here. Like what would happen now is knight takes d5, e takes d5, bishop f6, and here I would have probably played the move b3, and yeah, the position should just be equal. I was looking at queen b6, for example, and now a couple of different options like queen d3 I was looking at, for example. Even though now I see that maybe bishop d4 is possible. Like I could also just exchange everything here and go rook e1, take, and I don't think that anything bad can happen here. Also, like black needs to be a bit careful. Like if queens are exchanged, just as an example, like if we enter a position like this, now with the pawn being on d3, it's probably nothing. But if I get bishop a5, then this pawn on c7 could always be a little bit weak. Yeah, just if we, how can I exchange queens the best? For example, like this. Well, now I win the pawn by force with bishop a5, but just to make a point, something like this could be a little bit dangerous for black, even though it's also probably quite difficult for me to break through, but this he should certainly avoid. Yeah, I'm thinking now. I mean, I was also looking, like I could also play bishop c3 here just to completely force a draw, basically. But I would have most likely played b3 if he decided to play on. And after queen b6, I wasn't entirely sure yet. Like queen d3 runs into bishop d4, so that's probably not the smartest decision. Maybe I can actually just exchange everything like this. And yeah, my pawns on the queen side do look a bit weak, but I don't think he has any way to go after them. Also, I have some tricks like queen e3 to force the exchange of queens. So I'm curious if he goes something like king f8, for example, maybe queen d3, queen c5, and now something. I don't think that queen a3 should be such a huge threat, because I should always have some counterplay. Let's just see if I go g3. Is queen a3 really a threat? I guess queen f5 could be possible at this point, and then queen c8 as an idea, or even bishop c3. The queen endgames should also always be a draw. So yeah, quite a boring game, like, to be completely honest. I just tried to play it safe. He surprised me in the opening, and after that I just didn't want to risk entering some super forcing lines. And kind of the logical result of that was that the game ended in a draw, and I will look for some other chances in the following games where I hopefully won't be surprised in the opening stage. Obviously, a draw against him is also not a bad result. It would have been nice to get some more chances, but yeah, that's how it is, and I also cannot complain about having a little bit more of a rest, since, as I said, my previous two games were pretty exhausting. So that was it for today. Again, let me know in the comment section down below if you guys want to see this line from the black side. If really many of you would like to see it, then I might actually do it for the public and not just for members only. But let me know what you guys think about it. And apart from that, thank you for watching, and I'm going to see you guys tomorrow for the recap of round number 4.